I have been saying for years that I'm going to write a book on learning circles. And this year I realized that I don't really want to write a book. It's really about the web. So I'm writing a website on learning circles, and I'm pleased that it's going along pretty well. I'm pulling together the community of people who are doing learning circles and getting them to write it with me, which is really fun. Mm-hmm. And what I have now, it's onlinelearningscircles.org. At the website, what you'll see is a description of the model, which is, you know, what I've described it before for classrooms, because there's always been an online learning circle guide for, well, not always, but for the last 10 or 15 years, there's been a guide for teachers doing learning circles in their classrooms. But actually, learning circles are being used to connect teachers, they're being used to connect researchers, they're being used at the university level. So I'm now writing a guide at the more general level. What do learning circles across all these different groups have in common? And just like the Surham principles, you know, I've come up with six or seven principles of learning circles. First is that a learning circle has the most diverse participants that you can have. It isn't about bringing together people that are all doing the same thing, mm-hmm. because you don't get enough variation. What really is exciting about learning circles is the different perspectives. Right. So we increase the diversity as much as we can within the pool of people that we're using to create learning circles. The second is that it is distributed leadership. And we talked a little bit about leadership earlier. Our models are shifting. You can see it in our TV programs. Mm-hmm. Perry Mason has been replaced by a CSI team. Right. Dr. Kildare has been replaced by Grey's Anatomy. The superheroes have been replaced by Ninja Turtles who work in a group. These are cross-generational, both genders, multiracial groups that work together with mentors and novices and people with different talents, bringing together their skills. That's the way our society is going, but our schools really haven't gone that way yet. Yeah. And it's one thing to say classrooms should change, but until we change the position of teachers, classrooms aren't going to change, because as long as the teacher is the sole person teaching a group of kids, then you're going to have a sense that, you know, it's that Superman, sure. Dr. Kildare or Perry Mason running the show. And what you really need is groups of teachers teaching groups of students. And when that happens, we will see real change in schools. We can start that now, and that's what Learning Circles really attempts to do, is to get teachers to see the power of working in groups as opposed to working alone. And when they sense that power, then it's easy for them to create that situation for their students. It just happens naturally because they understand what it's like. Watching our students in the Pepperdine program is really cool, because we change the way they see education. We change it the way they feel about education. We don't have to tell them what to do in their classroom. We watch them model, you know, we model the learning, and they then model it for their students. We don't tell them what to do. We show them what it feels like to be in a setting where people depend on one another, where they work with each other closely, where they care about the progress of one another. You know, it's not a matter of, you know, write a comment and read two other comments. They care about making this other person be the best person they can be, because they understand that's what leadership's about, and that to be a leader they need to care about the development of the other people that they're working with.
This reminds me of the difference that I've experienced going around the world in how people express our concept of the word teacher. And here we're teachers, even if we're administrators, most of us were teachers. They've all, you know, educators, you know, you call it different things. When I went to Malaysia, they have the word cigu. And chigu is a term that we would call teacher, but it means something so much more, because there's such an honor and a respect. And if you walk, the greatest thing you can call someone is chigu. And it's, I think, because of the quality that you've just talked about, which goes far beyond what the source of one's paycheck. It goes to the idea of bringing out the best in another human being and doing that, and that's your day job, is to bring out the best in other human beings. What a noble thing to do. And I imagine that there's a change in your students once they connect with that essence as who it is they are. They're not just someone conveying knowledge, they're actually someone developing the best in other human beings.
Yeah, yeah. And when you make that shift, it changes the way you teach. When you realize that it isn't about the content, and it's not teacher centric or student centric. It's relationship centric. It's the community. You're really thinking about what is the best way that I can interface with this group of people so that they can get better at what they need to be better at, better at who they are, who they want to be, who they are becoming. And that involves, obviously, content. Sure. They need to learn new things, but it isn't just the content. It's the learning the new things. It's the process of figuring out what it is I need to learn. We take away that process from students. We think that we can make it easier by cutting it into neat little chunks, and then all they have to do is remember this. But that's not learning. Learning is the planning and is the making decisions about how to organize things. The work that teachers are doing is really, or the curriculum developers are doing, is really the learning. And by not giving students the permission and the responsibility to be engaged in the learning process, we take away learning from them. And when kids say school is boring, we should really sit up and listen, because learning is really exciting. So if learning was going on,
wouldn't be boring.
It wouldn't be boring. Those two words don't go together. And so when kids say it's boring, it's because learning is not taking place in schools. And that's a really serious problem that all of us need to address.
Yeah. So when learning is happening, that also leads to knowledge building.
Well, that's actually, thank you for that nice segue. Knowledge building is the purpose of teaching. It isn't that kids can repeat what you've said. It's that they can build knowledge not only individually but collectively. We're in a world where people don't work alone. They work in teams. And so knowing
Unless they're in regular school.
Unless they're in regular school. But, I'm thinking of the workforce now. When people work, they work in settings that depend on them to be able to communicate their ideas to other people and get other people to work with them to solve problems. The problems we solve are more complex than problems that can be solved alone.
Sure.
We've solved the problems that are sort of simple, and we're working on ones that are really complex. And they can't be solved without working with lots of data from the past, data that we're collecting now, and lots of people who are looking at it from different perspectives with different expertise from different disciplines. And so knowing how to do that early on is what kids need to have in school. So being involved in knowledge building communities, completely different way of doing school than teaching from a textbook.
I have a question now that regards the silos that we sort of see, and even in the terms of how we've had to organize this course just so that it would be accessible to people. We thought about it in terms of core subject areas, and we thought, well, there's English, and there's math, and there's science, and there's geography. But when I was looking at the partnerships projects that are at the core of it, I saw that, some of these could be strung together and could be multidisciplinary, so that this project over here that's talking about data and this project over here that's talking about safety and those two things could go together. Have you found that the learning circles help bridge and make multidisciplinary teams, or do the,
Well, we do that intentionally in learning circles. We bring people together who have different learning objectives. That's when I say the diversity of perspectives or the diversity of purposes. Take any corporation, and the people who work in that group or that corporation have different expertise. But they don't just work on their own little divisions and never talk to each other. They bring their expertise to bear on a similar problem or a similar theme. In schools, it would be themes and problems, and learning circles are problem-based. They're project-based work, and so they have themes that cut across disciplines, and that makes it possible for people from different disciplines to work together and bring their talents to the table.
So while we're not requiring people to do in this course multidisciplinary projects, I'm willing to bet that you would encourage people to take advantage of the opportunity to do so.
I definitely would. I think it's so much, we think that you can't work together. In our, again, back to my experience in the Pepperdine Online Master's Program, we combine people from the public sector, from industry, from government, from schools, and from organizations, all together in the same program, in the same master's program. So while people will say, well, you can't have elementary kids working with high school teachers, we have elementary teachers working with people from Boeing or people from people in the military. And it's amazing to look at the same problems across these different sectors.
Sure.
So building community in a school, building community in a university, and building community in a software corporation all have very similar parallels, but they also have important differences. And looking at both the similarities and the differences helps you think more deeply about the setting that you're in. So we think that, you know, going across disciplines, going across sectors is a really important way to get out of the, what we talk about as the box. So, you know, you're in a box. Your thinking is always in a box because you create boxes. I mean, they serve a purpose. They help you understand your setting pretty well. But in order to really get outside of your box and to think about new ideas, you need to sort of think about your same problem in a different setting. How does it change? How does it stay the same? And when you do that, you find that you get new ideas. It shakes up the way you think about things. It makes you realize that people have solved this problem in different ways than you're solving them, and that maybe some portion of that might be a solution.
Sure.
So yeah, we
in terms of a time frame and in terms of people's development, I mean, we know about the 10,000 hours, and we know about you know, different things as well. I go back to music again, and I think and when somebody's first starting out to play, they have to learn how to play the notes. Then when they play the notes, they have to learn how to string them together. And there's a certain point at which fluency turns those notes into a melody. And before that point, they're just individual notes, and they're just, you know, feeling the way. But then it reaches a certain point where it has flow. Same way with spoken language or reading, that fluency. How long could someone expect it to take them, in your experience, when they come in without this prior experience in doing it, and they begin engaging in this? When could they start to begin feeling comfortable or feeling a change or getting to fluency? How long does that take?